by every city in the region, so it's kind of handy.
And it's very handsomely designed and produced. It is a very
yes.
good, appealing, practical toolkit. I'm going to move to the opposite end of the table now. Tom Rayford, I'd like to ask you to comment on that same opening topic, your relationship to sustainability in the built environment.
Okay. Well, our company, Irresistible Community Builders, is creating what we're now calling a prototype integral urban eco-village in the Central West End as a model for, with the idea of creating a whole network of these throughout the region. And this is something that's evolved over the years. It started out to be a single co-housing project, and the challenges primarily of financing, with everything needing to be bigger and bigger to really get the attention of investors and banks and stuff. And then Carol and I got involved in the climate movement a couple years ago, and through that made a lot of connections and really started to expand our vision as to what was possible, and saw that there's a real opportunity here in the St. Louis region, because we do have a lot of vacant land and buildings, to do something like create a network of really innovative approaches to sustainability that goes beyond just tinkering around the edges and actually takes it on in a very big way, very comprehensive, very holistic. And that's our approach. It's kind of a synthesis of things that have been around for a while, that have proven track records, but have never really been done all in the same project or brought to the scale at which we're proposing to do it at.
Thank you. Mark.
Thanks, Jim. Interesting question. I came out of, I was telling Dana before, I came out of the ocean industries. I worked as a marine engineer for 20 years, and knew climate scientists back in the early 90s. They were talking about changes in the ocean chemistry and things like that. Went from the ocean industries into one of the most energy-sucking businesses in the world, that's designing and building data centers. And I realized then, an architect paid a visit to me in 2000. He had LEED AP on his business card. So I asked him what that was, and he explained it to me. So we started trying to incorporate elements of LEED into data centers. It was marginally successful with Verizon. Anything that could make money, they were in favor of. So I left there and started a green building and energy efficiency company about 6 years ago, and then decided to focus on an area where I could have an impact and actually see the fruits of my labor on a day-to-day basis, which has been very rewarding. So now it is community solar and larger commercial scale projects, and trying to teach my kids the importance of turning the lights off, recycling plastic. So I think life is a series of everybody has said, what's your aha moment? I suppose I have had a number of them every few years where I realize, oh, there's something else. There's something else that's practical and that's attainable, or maybe that's not attainable.
And you mentioned LEED. Does everyone here know what LEED is and understand about that, or would you like a little more explanation? Anyone? Please.
Okay. LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. It's a green building program developed by the U.S. Green Building Council. There's a table out in the lobby. It is a third-party verified program where people try to achieve certain levels of sustainability and energy performance in ways that the Focus program attains these sustainability levels for cities. LEED does it for buildings. Energy, water conservation, sustainable sites and landscaping and preservation, materials that are used in a building, and also the indoor environmental quality and lighting and natural daylighting and other connections to nature in a building. And there are, LEED has been around for maybe 12 years. The St. Louis chapter of the USGBC has been in 10 years. This is our 10th year. And I asked Emily Andrews for some statistics today. She told me that 10 years ago, there was one LEED certified building in St. Louis, and that was the Monsanto Nidus Center. And that was part of the LEED pilot program when LEED was first invented. And today we have 80 certified LEED commercial buildings in St. Louis and 65 certified residential buildings. And I think probably 50 of those, Richard, you probably know, how many of those are Habitat?
I think maybe all but 3.
Right, so over 60 of them are Habitat for Humanity homes downtown.
We have the second highest number of LEED Platinum certified homes of any city in the country. Thanks to our LEED Platinum is the top level. They're also Energy Star 5-Star Plus, and those homes are built by 70% volunteer labor. They're the first homes for most of the people who live there, and they are the absolute top of the line high-performance homes that can be built.
I would like to be living in one myself.
Would you?
Yeah, I would.
It'd be a nice size, it'd be easy to dust. Thank you, Mark. Charlie Binns, as an architect, would you take the question next, since we're talking about LEED and green building?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd also like to go back to that phrase, built environment, because it's as nebulous as sustainability, probably, as a term. And yeah, coming out of school, architecture school, where I went at a time when sustainability and green issues were sort of still a little bit, taboo is not the right word, but there's still a lot of backlash from the professors that I had from, I think, what they saw in the 70s, or what they experienced in the 70s as the sort of an aesthetic of eco-design that they didn't like. So I came out of school at a time when it wasn't quite like the trend that it is today. And I don't mean that like in a pejorative sense. I was really interested in, I eventually got involved in working with young people through an organization called After School Matters in Chicago. And I started a program called Learning in the Built Environment, which was, I think, striving for getting young people engaged in understanding the built environment and getting at what does that even mean. And just kind of realizing that everything around them actually is a sort of design moment or a planned moment that's planned for them, but not necessarily very intentionally. So I guess it kind of had to do with trying to get these young people more aware and engaged in their surroundings. So anyway, and it's always an inherent part of I think how we talk about these issues, that green and sustainability are necessary, but not in the sort of nuts and bolts way of LEED rating, but more as a way of talking about sustaining life in these kind of communities. In Chicago now, I'm working here in St. Louis with the Rebuild Foundation in Hyde Park. And it's the same kind of conversations that we have there, where the projects that we're working on, which is renovating abandoned buildings and transforming them into community cultural spaces. I mean, you know, we're not doing LEED certification, although I think they could stack up pretty well. That's not necessarily the point to really to get into that, but it's really to create space for communities that might not necessarily have a place or an opportunity to talk about some of the bigger issues that are affecting the communities, which environmental issues are one of them, but one of many issues.
And I just want to point out, with respect to my colleague Richard Riley, who helped convene tonight, who has been a tremendous advisor to Habitat for Humanity. Habitat has been able to earn LEED certification for that many buildings, do the documentation, pay the fees, because of significant grant support. So your statement, Charlie, about using those best practices, using those kinds of standards, not necessarily getting the certification. In my view, those two things are equally valid. And a system like LEED ideally is working to put itself out of business. So last but not least, Bob Hansman, the opening question about your relationship to sustainability and the environment. And I gotta just give another plug for Bob. Connection to another panelist. Bob and his adopted son, Jovan, received a Focus St. Louis What's Right with the Region Award in 2008. So your mantle probably takes a lot of dusting.
Throw it in the drawer. I give it to Jovan. That was a great segue into what I was going to say. You planned it. Because I sometimes think, you know, and when I talk to Rich about why do you want to be on that panel, I think it's maybe to add another note that's not one of the most obvious ones, but you alluded to it. I'm not exactly contrarian, but sometimes close enough. I'm going to start with a little anecdote. My students, architecture students, were doing proposals some years ago for up in Ward 22 area. And the review was up on Hodemotten, around Theodosia, the contention where we work, an abandoned bar doing a review. And the students were actually, you know, as students as they do, they were proposing all sorts of wonderful, sustainable, green ideas, community gardens, and this and that, right? And the folks that lived in Wellston through Ward 22 were being very patient. And after a while, it was like, all right, you see where we live, you see all the just filth and dirt around here, and you're suggesting a community garden is what we need, right? And it was one of those very uncomfortable wake-up moments for everybody. And some people just said, you know, we don't have the leisure time to take care of this kind of stuff. This requires maintenance. It's not just an idea. It's constant maintenance. Some people even said, you know, we've moved up north to get away from our agriculture. I mean, there were all sorts of stuff, right? And this was a kind of aha moment for the students. It wasn't who's right and who's wrong, but how complete is anyone in this conversation?